Hi, I'm Jason.
I'm Fran.
This is Bo Peter.
And I'm Nicole. And this is Marketing for What Matters, where we explore how marketing paired with a regenerative mindset can uplift humanity, heal the planet, and still achieve profitable business growth.
Hey everybody, this is Bo, and I want to ask you, what does it take to attract top ESG talent to your organization? How can you build a purpose-driven team that truly makes a difference? In this episode of Marketing for What Matters, I help you unlock the secrets to successful recruitment in the sustainability sector with our guest, Dan Moussa. Dan is a co-founder of Talesca Recruiting Advisory and host of the Engaging ESG podcast. Today, we discussed how to attract top ESG talent, where we dive into the strategies that can make your hiring process stand out to attract the best talent for you in the sustainability world. Dan will share powerful insights on the importance of aligning personal and organizational values, the role of authentic storytelling in recruitment, and how storytelling starts far before you post your job ad. Finally, we discuss how emerging reporting regulations are reshaping the corporate sustainability landscape and what it could mean for you. So, what can you learn from a company that's leading recruitment in the energy, ESG, and sustainability sectors? How can you ensure that your business stands out to top-tier candidates? This episode is going to cover all that with actionable advice, real-world examples, inspiring stories that should empower you to build a future where profit meets purpose. So, don't miss out on this chance to gain some valuable nuggets of information that could change the way you approach hiring. Continue listening now and discover how you can attract top ESG talent and make a lasting impact. See you soon. Hello, everybody. This is Bo Peter from Marketing for What Matters. Today, I am joined by Dan Moussa. He's the co-founder of Talesca, the talent advisory in the energy, ESG, and sustainability sectors. He's also the host of the Engaging ESG podcast, which I believe is on its third season now. Did I get that right, Dan?
That's awesome. Right. Yeah, we just what we this week will be episode 3 of season 3 coming out this week. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. This is something exactly what Marketing for What Matters aspires to. You know, we're in early pickings here, but this is going to be really fun. So Dan, thank you for joining the call today. I'm really excited to showcase everything that you have built so far. So let's start with that. What is Talesca and the Engaging ESG podcast all about? You can take them one by one. And what inspired you to start these?
Yeah, really good questions. I guess probably blessed to split them. So Talesca, we are a recruitment advisory organization, and we specialize in ESG, sustainability, and renewable energy. We're based in Brisbane on the east coast of Australia. We work across APAC and beyond. And really, that organization was started for 2 reasons. The first is obviously because Kevin, my co-founder, and I are extremely purpose-driven, and we wanted to have our own impact on the world when it comes to climate action, and understanding that, well, you know, we're not renewable engineers or we're not ecologists or climate experts, but we do have a skill set in recruitment that we can put to really good use and work with purpose-driven companies. And that's, you know, to be honest, driven by Kevin and I, you know, becoming parents to young kids, and when you start to consider actually future generations and what you're leaving behind, and you start to look at the numbers and the stats, it's pretty confronting. And actually, the name Talesca is our kid's name. So I've got TA is Taylor, and then Ked's got Leo and Francesca. So the name Talesca is actually, you know, about the future generations. A little bit awkwardly, I have had a second son called Rolly. He's not involved in the name, so I'll probably have some sort of awkward conversation at some point. So that was the big half, and then I guess the second half was, you know, certainly we believe that recruitment can be a lot better. I don't think the recruitment industry is in a fantastic state at all. I think it's become too sales focused, not enough consultancy focused, not enough recruitment consultants adding value to clients and candidates. So we really wanted to build a better organization that does recruitment significantly better, much more consultative, less transactional, and as I say, really focused on creating long-term partnerships with organizations and candidates, where we help organizations build and develop over a number of years, not just a case of coming in, doing one transaction and leaving. That's kind of the antithesis of what we are. So that's Talesca in a nutshell, and we could pop into that a bit more in detail. And I guess, the ESG and sustainability podcast that's been going for a year and a half now, that came from, well, I started that, but really from a lack of sort of podcasts in the space, to be honest. I'm a big podcast listener. It's probably a way that I learn a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And was throwing myself more and more into ESG and sustainability, and went to podcasts to learn, and I just couldn't find anything of great significance. There's a lot of podcasts out there that were either really technical or sharp sort of updates and information and headlines, but nothing conversational that brought people together in terms of collaboration and innovation. So I wanted to achieve two things. One was tell great sustainability stories and speak to sustainability leaders about their own journeys and their own careers and what they're seeing in terms of where we are currently versus where we need to be, but also to tell the stories of great impactful organizations, be startups or climate active organizations or climate tech or sustainable organizations who have been on awesome journeys and doing really good things. To be able to do two things. One is to tell their stories so that other sustainability professionals can have access to ideas and ways of doing things and knowledge that they might not have, but also really to, I guess, simplify ESG and sustainability for the everyday person. Because if you look at society at the moment, everyone is constantly seeing sustainability, ESG, climate action, carbon. It's all around them, but how many people actually really understand what that is, what it means, and actually what we're headed towards in terms of society and the planet and the dangers that we're really actually facing and are much closer than people think.
Amazing. Well, Dan, I love the energy that you bring to this and how passionate you clearly are about being able to tell this story. And how a story goes in recruiting, I definitely want to come back to that. But something I just want to highlight that I really stuck with what you were saying about you might not have that sustainability background, but you've got this skill set that you want to apply to sustainability. And I feel like for anyone listening, especially, that this is super important because just, we at Peaceful Media, we're marketers. We don't have a sustainability background, but we're doing not just this podcast and not just wanting to work with, we want to work with more sustainable organizations so that we can use our skill set and have that impact. So I think that's absolutely amazing and something that really, it just means that anyone can go into sustainability and use that skill set that they have.
Yeah, well, that was, selfishly, the great thing about the ESG Sustainability podcast is I basically get like an hour and a half lecture once a week with a sustainability expert. So, over the last 18 months, that's been incredible. But I think, I've thrown myself into it. I've done some short courses at the Cambridge Institute of Sustainable Leadership. I'm doing some coursework with the UN Global Compact Network. I think if you want to get into this industry, you have to really throw yourself into it, immerse yourself in it. But I think you have to live it and breathe it. One thing I'm really big on at Talesca is, look, yes, we are we work in the sustainability sector, but therefore we have to live it. So, there's no paper in this office, and we're on a journey. We're starting our B Corp application, a ban like plastic cups and packaging in the office, because I don't want to just be seen as an organization that's trying to commercialize the space. Like, we want to become an example to others who are in the space as well. So, yeah, look, I think there's no barriers to entry, but I think if you're going to be involved, you need to sort of be personally aligned and have your personal values to that as well, because people see through it pretty quickly. And I think you have to be extremely respectful to the fact that there's some incredible professionals who've been in the industry for 15, 20 years who have been slogging it out, banging their heads off the table, and finally now we're getting the wheels in motion and some traction. So you have to be really, really respectful of what's become before, in terms of the trailblazers and the grafters who have managed to get the sustainability juggernaut moving.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure we might get to this at some point, but greenwashing is, of course, an incredible antithesis to what a lot of the sustainability movement is trying to do. And so, indeed, as you say, we got to be very careful of this and very respectful of those who've come before us and really put in the time and effort. I suppose my assertion that really anyone can jump in and learn about this, is that it is part of this journey, right? So like, you said, it's about learning, it's about understanding, it's about doing the actual work and then putting that into motion so that you can be a more sustainable organization yourself. I think why it's important to recognize this is that I think there are people who have some ideas that you have to be perfectly sustainable before you can start to really go into this direction. And I want to challenge the assertion, this feeling, and challenge people to jump in and start doing the thing, to start learning, to start applying it to their own organizations, their own businesses, or maybe if you're a freelancer, to just do it yourself. And start supporting these organizations that are doing the great work, just as Talesca is supporting so many great organizations in their search for, the right talent to work in their sustainable organizations.
I think you make a really good point there about the assertion of perfection, and that is almost a barrier to being sustainable, because, and it's tied to greenwashing, right? Organizations want to get everything absolutely perfect before they announce it, or they want to go on a sustainability journey, but they want to have every single thing in order. And if that's not achievable, like, take a first step, that's achievable, like, no one's saying you have to be perfect. And I think we need to change the narrative for organizations to say, do you know what? Like, we're not perfect, and that's fine. Like, we'll put our hands up, we're not perfect, but we're trying to be better, and these are the steps we're starting to take. That's fine. Like, I think that's almost more important, and we'll see more movement and more action that way if an organization is trying to say, we're just going to sit quietly, in the crowd, not say anything until we feel we've got everything absolutely perfect, which, ultimately we'll probably never get to, right?
Exactly. So I think that really goes nicely into the next question. When you are looking at companies to partner with, whether that's for Talesca or for your podcast, what are the criteria that you're looking for a sustainable organization, or potentially outside of just directly the kinds of companies that you're looking for? What do you want to see from a company to kind of see that hallmark of actually putting in the work?
Right, it's a really good example. I think there's certain industries we probably wouldn't align with straight away. So like gambling, tobacco, black coal, for example, like really aggressive organizations that have no interest in sustainability, like not for us. So I guess the first thing we need to see is some genuine purpose and genuine value. And it's quite easy to do, right? You can see through an organization who just wants to, listen, we just need a reporting person for ESG because we have to tick these boxes X, Y, and Z. Like, probably not for us. An organization say, listen, we're starting to take sustainability seriously, and we're looking for these skill sets because we want to set science-based targets. We want to move things forward. Then awesome, like, you guys want to make an impact. We want to support you. And more so, rather, even organizations who are well on their sustainability journey, right? You have established sustainability teams, sustainability leaders. They want to build their talent teams. We're like, yeah, I'd love to partner with you guys because you're well on your way. It might surprise some people. I'm currently working in a role with Ampol, who are a major fuel producer, right, in Australia, because they're running a pretty aggressive decarbonisation program currently. They've committed to being net zero across their operations by 2040. They've got gateways at 2030 and 25 in terms of emissions reductions. And they're also investing heavily into future industries and future energy and future fuel. So to me, like, they don't do a lot of great stuff, but that's fine because, again, it's like we can't just turn off oil production and fuel production tomorrow because the world will fall apart. So there has to be some realization and some realism around this. But can we produce things and do things a lot better? Absolutely, and we'll support you doing that.
Awesome. I think that's, again, it highlights the idea of not striving for perfection and just getting the ball rolling. And if you see that value in what a company is doing with and you believe in them, then that's good enough, right? And that's good enough to get the ball rolling and help them find the right talent in your case.
Yeah, and I think, like that's it. We have to get the ball rolling, and if nobody moves forward and nobody starts trying, the biggest thing for me in sustainability is the two pillars for me are collaboration and innovation. Like, the only way forward is for people to collaborate and share ideas and work together. And there's there's loads of examples of that, globally, of some multinationals who are opening the bonnet and saying, hey, this is how we've delivered this, so you can go and do that. And we need innovators. We need people to continue to innovate, bring up ideas, new suggestions, new ways of doing things. That's the only way we'll move things forward. And that comes from people starting and trying things and giving it a go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That does make sense. And I want to come back to this, especially on the I want to talk later about employer brand. And I think that this ties into that nicely. But before I get there, I mean, for you, what does a successful recruitment strategy look like for a sustainably focused business? And maybe it does include innovation and collaboration, but it just would love to hear on you there what really stands out for you to make something successful.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to answer both questions, right? Because I think for me, the biggest, and it's not just sustainability, the biggest area or the biggest error organizations make in recruitment really is they're not great at telling their story and how to position themselves in the market, right? So, a generic advert on LinkedIn or Seek or Indeed or Monster Jobs or whoever it is doesn't do a great job at telling your story of who you are. Now, if you look at sustainability professionals as a whole, you're working with really driven, purpose-driven, value-driven people, right? Who want to make an impact. And so, these amazing individuals are more want to align their personal values into their organizational values, and they want to understand that if I go into this organization, can I make an impact? So it's really crucial that these organizations can share that story and tell that. Like, you cannot post that in a LinkedIn job advert or one-page job advert. And that's how we work with our clients. We're like, listen, we need to really focus at the start of this process and tell you about how you're going to tell your story. Let's get your leaders on video. Like, why have you been there for 20 years? What keeps you there? What gets you up in the morning? Why are you committed to these targets? What's your own views on sustainability? What's your personal values? What opportunity awaits for you coming into this business? These are the steps we're already taken. If companies aren't able to demonstrate that, then your recruitment process falls over at the first hurdle, in my opinion. So yeah, that's the biggest one. I think when you look at a recruitment strategy, is actually the first piece is the most important piece, is how you take this role to market and how you position yourself effectively with the candidates you're trying to attract.
So it sounds like in a lot of ways that to get the best fit candidates who are really going to be purpose driven and aligned with what you're doing, it starts way before you ever write the job description. It starts about telling that story about your brand and how you're approaching all of this sustainably. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. It's like anything, right? Before you go and do anything, like you get your own house in order and your own ducks in a row. Okay, cool. We want to go and recruit a head of sustainability, for example. Well, that's great, but why are we doing this? Is it because someone on the board said we need a head of sustainability to keep your investors happy? It's not going to work. People will see through it. It's going to be a long-winded, I would say, an unsuccessful recruitment process. You'll bring someone in, but they're going to get pretty frustrated quickly, and you'll see a high turnover in that role. Is it a case saying, okay, listen, we need a head of sustainability because we recognize we want to do better. Sustainability is actually a key driver for this organization going forward. We want to establish a strategy. We want to look at our emissions. We want to look at our supply chain. We want to attack modern slavery. We want to come in and set science-based targets. And we recognize that we need someone exceptional to come and do that. Well, then that's a different prospect you're even considering taking to the market in the first place, right? So I think the first thing is really, as I say, looking internally at your own house, having your ducks in order, looking at what you want to achieve from a sustainability point of view, because that will ultimately decide the type of person and the way you take this role to the market.
Absolutely. Okay, so really it's starting with that end in mind, having a really clear purpose as an organization and really being aligning with that. So is that
if you can't communicate your organizational purpose internally, then how can you communicate that to the talent market to go and get the right person in?
Right, that absolutely makes sense. So I think you did a really good job of answering or tackling that sort of the idea of the employer brand and how important that is. So are there any other big mistakes that companies are making when they are looking to attract and retain this type of talent in sustainability?
Yeah, I think the other thing is people just try and like sustainability means so many things to so many people, right?
Right.
Is it environmental? Is it social? Is it purely governance and reporting? Is it carbon? Is it decarbonisation? Is it circularity? Is it modern slavery? There's a huge sort of skill set within sustainability, right? And too often I see sort of someone to put a job of head of ESG and sustainability, and you look at the job description and I'm like, that's 3 jobs. Or no one person is an expert in all those areas or has enough strength across those 2, 3, or 4 things. So actually, you should just split this up. And actually, you probably just need someone with a sustainability reporting background to join your finance team who can support your emissions reporting and your climate reporting. But actually, for your sustainability piece, you need someone who's actually a strategist who's come in, developed a sustainability strategy, delivered it, can manage stakeholders, has done impactful projects previously and has experience in that space. So that's I think the number one error people make is they mesh together too many different jobs and don't actually take advice on what they're looking to achieve and what capabilities they need in their business where, and we just wrap it up into one sort of big head of sustainability.
Mm. I have a feeling, especially as someone who's done plenty of job applications in the past, that this is probably something that permeates across the recruitment industry, not just sustainability.
100%. But I think that's the most of the recruitment industry's fault, right? Because like most recruiters don't challenge clients. There's just been this dreadful thing in recruitment for too long, but it's like, the clients are all holy and they'll only pay us when we do a bit when we get success at the end, and they don't want to listen. I'm like, no, we're experts in our space, and we should be adding value in consulting to our clients and being strong enough in saying, hey guys, like this job you're recruiting for is 2 jobs, not 1. And if you can't take that on board and recognize that, then we probably can't help you because this person you're looking for doesn't exist. So let's not go through a 5-6 month process to establish that when we can see that now. So to your point about that, that's not just sustainability; it permeates all markets. But the recruitment industry's got to be stronger and better when it comes to that sort of stuff.
And I mean, I imagine that ultimately, if you are, as a recruitment agency or as a recruiter, not willing to tell the person who you're helping here with looking for the right candidate that they're not setting themselves up for success, you are ultimately not going to be successful yourself in finding someone who's going to be a good long-term fit for that role.
100%. But you'd be amazed by how often it happens, and because people just think, I just need to get jobs on my desk to fill to try and get some commission. They're doing, it's all done for the wrong reasons. Like if you look at people, I get I did a post on LinkedIn the other day and I said that recruitment's a consulting role, not a sales role, and I got there's 160 comments on there, like people telling me I didn't know what I was talking about and I should be down a job centre. I kind of totally disagree, because too often people just say this job is sales, so if I want to make 5 sales, I need to have 20 requirements on my desk. So they're out there winning job after job after job after job because they know their conversion rate's maybe 25% or 20% of what's on their desk. So what the client doesn't understand is that they're just sitting on someone's desk, their requirement, and it's going up and down this priority order, and depending on how confident the recruiter feels about how they can fill it and make their commission. That's totally wrong, right? And that's why the industry gets a pretty dreadful rep and people get really frustrated for it. Whereas actually, if you can partner with a client from the offset and be involved at the very start of the process when it comes to discussing their requirements, looking at salary benchmarking, actually looking at your org structure, seeing where this job might fit in, what's the best reporting line, what the roles and responsibilities based on what you're looking to achieve, then if you're able to add value and expertise at that stage, then you're going to have a much better result and a much better recruitment process as you go forward.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense to me, Dan. Kind of going back to what you said about this being a particular issue as well in sustainability, and that you don't necessarily prefer work with organizations who might not have the ability to, let's say, split that into 2 roles. But how should companies fix this before looking to hire, or how should they best approach this challenge when making a rule that has too many pieces?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of biased, but I'm like, ask for help. And I think that's the value the recruitment industry can bring, and it's often not seen. Typically an organization makes a decision internally, right? And then they'll go to the recruitment partner and say, hey, here's a job description, here's a job, go and fill it, right? And the recruiter toddles off and tries their best. But, like when you go and see your accountant, you don't just put your books in, right? At tax time and say, here's our books. Can you do our tax and save as much as you can, right? Ultimately, you're having a conversation 3-4 months before tax time to say, here's how we're looking. What should we start moving where, and how can we present this in the most efficient way from a tax purpose, right? Everyone does that every single year. That's the way it's always been, and it works, right? If you think you're going to have a problem around a legal issue with a term of business or a clause, you don't wait till it's done and then go and sort it out. You go to your legal department and say, listen, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Like, what's your advice around this clause, or how should we approach this, right? Well, find a really good recruitment partner and go and have that conversation early. We're thinking about hiring this person in the business. Cool. This is the approach we're thinking of taking. We think we need this. This is how much we're going to pay them. And a really good recruiter or a really good consultant will be able to say, yep, you're right. Actually, you should probably need to look about 25 grand more or 25 grand less, and here's the comparables in the market. And actually, this role you're looking for does exist, and I can think of 2 or 3 or 4 people. Is this the sort of person you like? Or, to be honest, I've been doing this for 10, 15 years. I've never seen one candidate be able to do all this sort of stuff. So I think you should maybe consider splitting it in 2, or if you can't split it in 2, then what's your must-haves and what can we compromise on? But I would sort of challenge most industries and say, how often does that conversation happen with your recruitment partners at that earlier stage? Not too often. I don't see, or certainly not enough.
I see. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that this does take a longer form approach, especially if you do want to build the sustainability team, right? To really get clear on what matters and getting some of these ducks in a row.
Not energy, any market, just be prepared early, right? Like, if it's like anything, right? If you're proactive versus reactive, what has a better result generally, right? Proactivity generally has a better result to reactivity. You can argue that in any market, any industry, anything, right? So just be proactive, be forward thinking, be prepared, rather than trying to scram it all together last minute, and then obviously that's going to have an effect in the process.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Now, with that in mind, I mean, there are smaller organizations out there. They might not have the ability to hire tons of different roles, and they might be shy to use recruitment services because it's an investment for sure. What advice would you give these types of organizations that might have more limited resources? How should they focus their investment to get the most impact when looking for the right people?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, right? I mean, often you speak to an organization right now about, look, and I've done it, we're like, we just don't have the budget to use outside support, okay? Like, as personally, I've taken the mindset. I've kind of helped these organisations out with advice and support and some ideas, and even some candidates who I know are looking, because I kind of believe that that'll come around in the future, right? When they have grown and they are established and they do have revenue, then you hope they're going to come back because you helped them out. So I think good partners will still support you if you've got good relationships with good recruiters, and the right people will support you. And help where they can, right? Not just commercially focused sales. So that'd be one route. And I guess, the other piece is, like, often companies and even small companies think like, well, I would say if you don't think you have the money to invest in recruitment, then just take a step back and work out what the cost of an empty seat is. Because, a recruitment fee might be $20,000. Yes, it's a cost, but actually, what's the cost of business of not having this position filled for 4, 5, 6 months? That could be $100,000, right? But again, how many organizations actually take that view and ever just see, oh my God, recruitment, $20,000, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, it's a lot of money, but have you thought about the cost of your business of not having this person in place for 6 months, and how does that affect your bottom line? And, take that approach in it, and you might come up with a slightly different view in it.
Yeah, so that's going to make a big difference in the perspective as well. Yeah, well, and okay, so if we go back to storytelling, maybe this is another way to, because I imagine that there's going to be a lot of organizations out there listening to a podcast like this saying like, hey, I really want to work in sustainability. Our organization really wants to work in sustainability, but we don't have, tons of resources yet. So then I might imagine, based on what our conversation was so far, that it kind of goes back to storytelling, building an employer brand. Is this somewhere where you think that a smaller organization can make themselves shine out a little bit more?
Yeah, I think small organization, medium-sized organization, big organization, right? If you want to stand out or you want your job or your requirement to stand out in the talent market, then you have to think differently, right? So, for example, Talesca, the one thing we do is we build a small microsite for all of our clients when we're working their role, and on that role it has a video of myself or one of our consultants talking about the company representing, who they are, the job they're looking for. Then on that same page is job description, organizational structures, EVPs, press releases. There's a link to a video from the hiring manager or the CEO or the head of people and culture, talking about the organization, what the values are, why do they work where, why have they been there for 10 years, what's the opportunity that awaits someone. So we're really empowering the candidate to say, listen, here's all the information, we think you're aligned, but make a decision. Surely that stands out way better than just posting a job advert on a website or a LinkedIn page, right? So it's just, how can you do things differently, and how can you effectively communicate your message? That's the advice I would give. Because if I look at my own career, like, I've always tended to follow people rather than organizations, right? And I think a lot of people are the same. Like, when I interview for a job, I'm more like, well, you've been here for 10 years. Why? Like, why is it so good? What's kept you around? What's your plan for your team? What's the 5-year strategy for the business? Where do you see my role being in that? That's really what people care about and want to know. Not, cool, like, here's a job description, here's my day-to-day, and we've got a great benefits package, and you get free fruit and free coffee on a Monday, and we love our people, we're all about family. That's great on an A4 page, but people want to hear that from you, from the hiring manager, from the leader. Why have you been there? And that's the way to make yourself stand out in the market. So it's not overly complex, it's not overly difficult, it's just a different approach, and you have to look at it from a candidate's point of view.
Right. So I think this is here where people would say, or marketers would say, marketers like me would say, you have to build your personal brand, right? If and align that with your company. So it's not just about what the company is doing, but especially if you're a small organization, oftentimes the CEO, the founders, they are the employer brand as well. So it's just about putting yourself out there and talking about exactly what it is you're doing, especially if you have that inspiring message aligned with sustainability in some form.
Yeah, and if I was a hiring manager or an organization owner, and I knew I was going to start hiring, I'd be starting to post stuff on socials and LinkedIn and give people an insight into who you are as a person, because people will follow, right? And they'll be like, oh, this guy looks awesome, or this lady looks awesome. I'd love to work for them. And then lo and behold, you go up and post a job and you're like, oh, she's got a job on, I want to go work for her. Like, I've been following her for 6 months, and then suddenly you can have a much different response, right? Because people have an insight into who you are and the work you do and where your values are and what you enjoy doing. Whereas too often, you see a job application and there's nothing personal about it. A job post, there's nothing personal about it whatsoever. And you'll go on like the leader's LinkedIn page and there's nothing.
Right.
You've got no idea who that is. And you're like, cool, the job looks kind of cool, but I've got questions, and there's actually the same job that's been advertised just down the road. But wow, this lady looks amazing, and look, she's got a young family, or they're really passionate about sustainability, or they do a lot of charity work. Cool, my value alignments are here. I'm going to apply for this job, not this one. Personal branding, absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I imagine that there's going to be founders listening to this who are already going to say, I'm too busy. I've got too much on my plate. Where would I even start? What would you say to them? Like, just go and do it, or just to start sharing? What little
I
step
think,
can I take?
I think absolutely. Give me a shout on LinkedIn, and I'll help you through it and give you some advice around it. But I think, you have to go and do it. I mean, like, if you're serious about growing a business and investing in people, right, then people are your biggest asset, right? Everyone knows that. And I think particularly when we go into the world of AI, great people become even more of an asset. So if you're like too busy to invest some time and look at that, then I kind of reverse the question and say, how much do you actually care about growing and investing in your people?
Great way to turn it around. Great way to turn it around. Well, also for anyone listening, you just heard Dan say, give him a shout, reach out to him on LinkedIn, and he'll help you through this. So find
Please,
Dan and the podcast and Talesca on LinkedIn. Dan, I've been following you now for I think 4 or 5 months on LinkedIn, and I do think you really do post consistently great content. So I really do appreciate that. So if anyone
that's
who's
good.
listening,
I'm glad at least one person likes it.
I'm 100% certain I'm not the only one. All right. Well, I love that. I love the idea about the building the personal brand and how important that is for this. Are there any companies or leaders in the sustainability sector that you think are doing a particularly good job of promoting themselves in this way to attract top talent?
I think there's a lot globally, right? I mean, I wouldn't pick on one or two. I think there's definitely organizations, and you can see the effort they've gone to in terms of its video content. There's updates, there's social posts. You can see the companies have recognized this and need to go down a different angle, and you can see others who have no post apart from a job advert every 6 months, and there's nothing behind it. Some of the big organizations, you can go down such a rabbit hole of this sort of stuff, right? Like everyone, you'd argue that like Microsoft, for example, made a big statement of a Mother Nature video, right? But then, well, what are the costs of that video, and actually how much of it is genuine? But from a hiring point of view, amazing, because everyone's like, oh my God, these guys have got the best sustainability program ever, and I want to get involved in it. But to me, just make the company to do it best. Just there's a bit of vulnerability to them, and there's a bit of personality to them, and there's a bit of an individual personalization. They open the door to who they are. You don't have to go super personal and share too much, but just give enough. Hey guys, this is who we are, and this is it's not just words. It's not just, hey, we're a family and we've got a great culture. It's like this is known. Like everyone reads that. Every single job description nowadays is it's a family environment and we've got an incredible culture. Show examples. Like how do you guys spend time as a team? Mm-hmm. What do you do support? Do you support each other? Like get some stories from parents in your organization. Now, are we actually generally getting supported? Just give genuine, vulnerable, honest content, not just words and phrases that people have seen 100 times before.
This really resonates. What I've heard you say previously is about doing authentic storytelling when it comes to recruitment or whatever it is. Just really tell what's actually going on within the organization. And I really like how you give these sort of concrete examples, like talk to the people working on your team, show how you're supporting them, and this content will speak volumes to anyone who's listening and interested in your company.
Yeah, because ultimately you get found out, right? Because if you say we do X, Y, and Z, and everyone's super happy, it's incredible, and you arrive in your first day, it doesn't take very long to work out that was all smoke and mirrors, and actually everyone's miserable, and all the things you said don't exist, and that does, longer term reputational damage. But there's a really good there's an interesting stat. I think if you have a really good interview process, a really good recruitment process, you'll go and tell one friend about it. If you have a bad process or a bad engagement, you'll go and tell 10 friends about it. So that's another way to look at it, right?
Things you just mentioned. You mentioned Microsoft and you mentioned reputational risk. And I've been told by other experts who I've interviewed that recruitment is one of the biggest things driving some of these bigger tech companies to start making changes around sustainability and actually investing into this because they want to attract more of that top talent, and especially in fields like data centers and AI, et cetera, that the people who are these experts, they have basically they can pick anybody. So it really makes a big difference in telling an employer story. Um, is that what you've been seeing as well in terms of the crossover in recruitment and sort of driving more ESG? What other
Yeah,
factors?
I think people by nature are becoming much more decision conscious, right? And much more aware of their decisions and how that affects their everyday life in terms of the legacy they're leaving behind for their children, right? And a big example of that is in Australia, which has got a huge minerals and mining community. You know, I've had a number of conversations with senior candidates say, "Hey, I want to get out of this sector and do something more purpose driven because my kids are coming home from school and they're learning about sustainability and the planet and they're asking what I'm doing and how it's affecting the planet." So I think having a robust sustainability strategy and a plan of where you want to go is definitely going to be key to attracting talent in the future. Absolutely. But that's like anything, right? If you produce something, a product or a material, consumer choice is going to drive your sales going to the future, right? If people are going to say, "Hey, this item of clothing you produced or this product, how was it produced? Where does it come from? How did you make it?" Right? So, consumer behavior is going to start driving sustainability. I think more and more. But absolutely, when it comes to attracting talent, people are going to be asking, well, cool, are you guys purpose driven? Are you value driven? What have you achieved so far? And what are your plans to improve? So if you have that in place, you'll open the doors definitely to more talent. The biggest thing, and that comes back to that risk piece, and I want to make it absolutely clear, I'm not by any means an expert in greenwashing and climate risk. So I don't portray to be, but I think if you're going to make these statements and put to people that this is what you do, just make sure you're doing exactly what you say. Don't sell the sustainability dream to attract talent and then not delivering it, because you'll find your talent leaving you pretty quickly, and you'll have a high attrition, and you'll have people walking to the door faster when they're coming in.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Is this something that you see companies doing and have struggling with? Is that they are doing that promotion and then they're losing and then having that attrition when it comes to their
No,
talent?
I don't think we're seeing it in terms of organisations that do it well and are generally pushing forward in sustainability and have a strong strategy and are actually making an impact or attracting more people. What I am seeing is that organisations that don't are losing people,
Hmm.
and they're losing particularly in the sustainability world at the moment. Is I think we've come to this juncture, probably more so in Australia, where cool, like the reporting side of it, with the mandatory reporting coming in, is on the whole moving towards the finance slash risk departments, where it probably should be, because it's annual reporting, it ties in there. So
Hmm.
that kind of means that actually sustainability professionals have a clear road to actually go and implement sustainable projects, make an impact, and start changing the business. And so organizations are quite exposed, right? Because they're like, well, hey, this is taken over by reporting now, and actually we're not that committed to sustainability. You've got a lot of people like, well, I can't make an impact. This company isn't allowing me to make an impact. I want to go somewhere else where I can. So we are seeing a lot of movement in terms of sustainability leaders and professionals. If they're not able to make an impact or the values aren't aligned to their organization, they're more than happy to stand up and walk out and make a change.
Hmm. I think when I spoke to you last, you mentioned these regulations as well. How do you think this is going to make the biggest impact? Is it simply on the things like recruiting and have being laid out like that, or what? How else is this going to have an impact on the future of sustainability and getting these corporates to do what they're going to say they're going to do and change their ways?
I personally think it's going to have a major impact. Like you can't move away from it. So I think by bringing in regulation and reporting, then people have to do it. They have to make some change. I think it will definitely force some good. I think actually the biggest impact it will have is probably globally, or certainly in Australia, on that SME market, right? Because they're the ones who are probably most underprepared and most effective and going to have to make the biggest change, right? If you consider that, a lot of I'll talk Australia, right? Your ASX 100, right? Your top 100 companies, we're prepared for this in terms of climate reporting and emission reporting and modern slavery, because they've been doing it already and they know it's coming, and they're pretty well prepared, and a lot of them are getting on top of it, right? But who's not prepared are all the SMEs who are going to get a knock on the door in 6 months or in 12 months' time, who's going to say, hey, listen, you've been supplying us a product or service for the last, 20, 30, 10, 5 years, whatever it may be. We've got to manage your report now, so I need your climate data on your emissions and your modern slavery and your supply chain. And they're going to be like, pardon? What?
Yeah.
What's this? Oh, and if you can't give it to us, then you probably can't be in our supply chain anymore. So we'll have to move you off and bring in a partner who's more aligned. So I think that's the biggest effect that the manager reporting side is going to have. And I think there's probably a real lack of education, understanding of what's coming towards those SME type organisations who need to get ahead of us pretty soon. Otherwise, they're going to be in for a bit of a shock, I think. So I think that's potentially one of the biggest impacts we'll see.
Yeah, and that's going to be quite a startling impact for a lot of these companies, just like you said, just like the pardon. And
yeah,
but person's problem is another business opportunity, I'm sure.
Yeah, but time will tell, right? Like the European markets are already pretty far ahead of reporting, and on the back of the reporting, you're seeing more and more legislation in European countries, right? Asia's getting there. Australia's got a bit of catching up to do, and all going well, the first cohort of manager reporting is going to come in the first of Jan 25. 1st Jan 25 for that first cohort of the large organisations. Again, I'm not an expert in what's happening in America, but there's been various appeals, right, in climate reporting stalling at the minute, and there's a lot of challenge to it. So it's not moving there, right? So different parts of the world are moving at different rates, and we're seeing different impacts and what's coming off the back of it. But again, companies need to collaborate, in different parts of the world need to collaborate regionally and say, hey, listen, we've been running regulation here, and this is what we've seen, and this has been the positive outcomes of it, or the negative outcomes, as there may be some as well.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm no expert on this, and this is definitely a topic I'm going to have to do some more research in, because I think there's a lot more going on there, and I really appreciate you being able to highlight the different aspects around the world here and how that's going to hopefully take place, or what might happen. Ask one more question. Yeah, just one more question for you on the recruitment front. If a recruiter is listening to this and they want to use their skills to make that positive impact on the world, especially in the sustainability sector, what advice would you give them to get going here, or how to take that next step?
You need to learn the market. I think don't disrespect sustainability professionals by pretending you understand the market and what they do if you don't, if that makes sense. Probably a quick way to brush up people the wrong way, right? I don't pretend to be an expert by any state of play, but I do have an understanding that of what people do and the industries they work in. And I didn't learn that overnight. So I think if you're going to go and get involved in the space, don't sort of half-arse it. Like embed yourself in the space. Make sure that actually you want to be a part of this movement yourself. Like, I've made changes in my own life, right? Like we now compost at home. I drive an electric vehicle. We recycle. I'm teaching the kids stuff because it's a path I've chosen to take myself. So don't just be like, I want to recruit in sustainability, but actually outside of working hours, I don't really care about it, right? I think it's something you've got to invest in personally. You've got to learn and throw yourself into the industry and really try and become, a knowledgeable individual, so you can provide maximum value to candidates and clients. Because if you're not knowledgeable about your sector, then how can you add that max value to candidate and client?
Absolutely. So are there any books, documentaries, courses, thought leaders in the space that have really inspired you and that you'd pass along to anyone who's interested in this?
Well, just thought leaders, there's many. I think, again, like, it depends, if you want to follow people on circularity or sustainability strategy or reporting, there's different areas. In terms of courses, Cambridge Institute of Sustainable Leadership has some fantastic courses. Your local, the United Nations has international global compact networks for each country. Certainly the Australian UNGCN has some fantastic courses that are coming out all the time. Again, I'm lucky. I podcast. That's been my way. I've just been able to have some amazing conversations with some awesome people. And I think I'm always cautious about thought leaders. I think, just be a thought sharer. Thought leading is ultimately thought sharing, right? People just call them thought leaders because they had the thought first. Just get out and speak to people. Embrace the subject, learn, be open-minded, be inquisitive, and I guess just be purpose-driven at the end of the day, ultimately. But yeah, maybe I'll come back to you and send you a few people you can put in the blog to go and share. But the likes of Susan Mazrahi in Australia from a modern slavery point of view is outstanding. Justin Frank down here, he's been involved for a long time. If you go on my podcast, the Engaging ESG and Sustainability podcast, just did a great episode of Luke Heelbooth, who's the CEO of BWD Strategic. There's a number of people on there, right? Just doing great things.
Yeah. So then it's a great resource right there, the Engaging ESG podcast. That's the place to go. And thanks. Yeah, I'll get some of these resources certainly in the show notes for people to follow up on if they're interested.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, Dan, as you know, here at Marketing for What Matters, we want to put our money where our mouth is, at least a little bit, while we go on this journey. And so as part of that, we want to plant trees on your behalf with our partnership with One Tree Planted. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly. And when we were getting ready for this call, you told me that you were interested in planting trees in biodiversity. You just tell the audience briefly, what makes you interested in planting trees in an effort to support biodiversity.
Yeah, I think I'm always reasonably, cautious about planting trees, but like these guys, I think are fully verified, right? And I think biodiversity loss is one of the biggest challenges I think we face as humanity for a number of reasons. Simply put, like everyone hated the COVID era, and in theory, like a loss of biodiversity means that there's obviously much more cross-contamination between humans and vermin, for example, right? So you're going to lead to greater pandemics. But alongside that, the loss of biodiversity has probably one of the greatest impacts on climate as well, or one of the most aggressive impacts on climate too. So that's why I've chosen biodiversity today, because we're losing it at a rate of knots, and really need to be to be stopping that and trying to get back.
Amazing. Well, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I really appreciate the perspectives that you've given us, and I hope that the audience will certainly find this valuable. I know that I've found this a very valuable conversation. Any last words that you want to share with us, where people can find you, any projects that you're working on? Feel free. This is your moment to share.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, mate. Thanks very much. As I say, just more than happy. I'm by no means a sustainability expert, but just certainly passionate and trying to add some value when I can. So thanks very much for having me on. And if anyone sort of wants to talk about anything we discussed today in the recruitment space, the sustainability space, and find me on LinkedIn and pop me a message, and more than happy to do so.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely be putting your LinkedIn and the website in the show notes so people can find you. And we'll be sharing some of the content from this podcast on LinkedIn as well. So we'll make sure that they can get connected with you. All right, Dan, thanks so much again today. And I appreciate so much your time and energy today.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Cheers, mate.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, Marketing for What Matters. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, or Pandora. Love the show? Leave us a review and follow us on social media at Peaceful Media to stay up to date about new episodes. And as always, thank you to this earth for giving us all we've ever needed. See you next time.